Okay, chapter 15. We're at chapter 15 here in War and Peace, and the novel is just still barely started. We're maybe starting to get a handle on some of the main characters, but it's just getting going still. And we're at the Rostovs. The dinner party's about to begin. Almost all the guests have arrived, except for maybe a couple. And they're primarily waiting for this one elderly lady whom everyone knows, Maria Dmitrievna. She was a lady celebrated not for her wealth or distinction, but for her straightforward speech and frank simplicity of her manners. Maria was known to the imperial family, as well as to all Moscow and all St. Petersburg. Both cities wondered at her, laughed at her rudeness, and told anecdotes about her. Nevertheless, all without exception feared and respected her. So this was a well-known person who spoke plainly, spoke bluntly, could count on her saying something awkward and plain, not diplomatic, but everyone expected her and respected her. And yeah, they're mostly just waiting for her to arrive. She's the last major guest. And we get a description of the Count. There's this cousin of the Countess there named Shinshin, and Berg is there. This is the person who Vera is attached to. And we get a description of the Count, how he just loves to be in the middle of things. He kind of sets these two people, Shinshin and Berg, talking to one another about the army or politics or whatnot. And the Count's just loving it. And he himself doesn't get involved in the conversation, but he just loves to kind of be in the middle of the action. And so here's not an articulate, educated fellow himself. Again, we see in terms of Count Rostov so much, but highly sociable, highly animated, and kind of a good-hearted, fun-loving fellow. Even though we know, again, there's this context of him maybe being out of his depth, not only in these conversations, but in terms of money management and all these things. But we get this description of Berg, who is attached. Not sure if he's betrothed to Vera yet or not, but it's very much, that's kind of expected, I believe. A fresh, rosy officer of the guards, irreproachably scrubbed, brushed, and buttoned up. And so, he was a guy, if you wanted someone on your team or on your work crew, this is kind of a guy you'd want. He's like to the point, kind of dots the I's, crosses the T's, gets the job done well. He's very, by the book kind of guy. A good team member, maybe a poor manager. Maybe you wouldn't want him as your team leader because he'd kind of maybe be a hard guy to work for. But it's very buttoned up, irreproachably scrubbed person. And so he's in conversation with this Shinshin guy, and a little more description about Berg. Berg always spoke politely, precisely, but his conversation invariably related to himself. And as soon as the topic turned on anything else, not directly related to him, he maintained a serene silence. He could remain silent for hours at a time without feeling or causing others to feel the least awkward. But as soon as the conversation concerned him personally, he commenced talking loquaciously and with visible satisfaction. So, a little bit self-absorbed. Maybe his social skills aren't something to write home about. In this way, maybe not so self-aware, but a very by-the-book guy, kind of follow the rules guy. People respected him. he had an enthusiasm about him, and he's this young guy. And so even though he kind of had these social faults of just kind of only being interested to talk about himself, his youth still kind of was a something that people at this time still didn't count it as a overly criticism against him. He was still someone trying to find his way, kind of like Boris in a way, but a little bit different as well. And so they're still waiting for this Maria to arrive, but Pierre arrives just before dinner. And we get this funny description of Pierre. He arrived just before dinner and awkwardly seated himself on the first chair he came across, right in the middle of the drawing room where he blocked everyone's way. The Countess tried to make him talk, but he kept looking around the room, naively peering through his spectacles as if searching for someone. He was being difficult and was the only person unaware of it. This mirrors back to, remember, Anna Pavlovna's party, where he came into the room and all the guests would come in and Anna would ceremoniously bring her to this old aunt and greet her and listen to what the aunt said. And Pierre was just oblivious to this, thinking about something else, looking at who's here, again, not meaning to be uncouth or rude, but just thinking about something else and not really, being in tune with the social rules and etiquette and so on. This was definitely not his strong suit. And so you see it happening here again. Well, and we think, in my mind, he's probably looking for Boris. Hey, where's that excellent young man I just met? I wonder where he is. And he's like this. And then so finally this Maria lady arrives. And there's some small talk and everybody kind of gets up and it's kind of like, okay, this dinner's going to get going. But she sees Pierre and she comes over to Pierre. And everybody's kind of holding their breath. Oh, what she's going to say to Pierre, just wondering, here's this Pierre guy who's this reputation of what they did in St. Petersburg with the bear and the policeman and Dolokhov and Anatol. And she's just like, oh, what's she going to say? You just come here, my dear, she said in a high, gentle voice. Come right here, my dear. She threateningly tucked up her sleeves still higher. Pierre approached, naively peering at her through his spectacles. Come closer. I used to be the only one to tell that father of yours the truth in the days when he was a court favorite, and now it's my sacred duty to do the same to you. She paused. Everybody remained silent in expectation of what was to follow. A fine fellow, to be sure you are. Your father on his deathbed, and you amuse yourself by mounting a policeman on a bear. For shame, sir, for shame. You'd have done better to go to war. And then she turned and gave her hand to the Count, who could hardly keep from laughing. And so she had this kind of rebuke, here's your verbal discipline, boy. And that's it. It's over. She's done with him and she's moving on. And the Count is kind of representative of the group as a whole, just enjoying all the action and the liveliness of all these interactions. And he can barely stop from laughing. And so the dinner begins. And all the guests come in to the dinner dining area, and notably, so many come in as couples. Berg comes in with Vera, and notably, Julie comes in with Nikolai, and so they're in no way betrothed to each other, but it's just kind of this formality happening, and it kind of provides another point of agitation for Sonia and this kind of wondering what's going on. You wonder who arranged that. Probably Countess Rostova. And so you have the Count at one end of this huge, large table with kind of most of the older, respectable gentlemen, the Countess at the other end with, in a kind of a similar way, and you have the children and the middle-aged people kind of in the middle of the table. So like Pierre and Boris were next to each other, Vera and Berg were there, and all the younger children were there, kind of sitting across from each other in the middle. Boris was explaining to his new friend Pierre who all the guests at the table were, and exchanging glances with Natasha, who sat opposite. Remember, Boris and Natasha were kind of a couple. Pierre spoke little, examined the new faces, and ate a great deal. You know, wherever Pierre was with, it's kind of like he did it with enthusiasm. At Anna Pavlovna's, with Dolokhov, you know, he was sincerely involved in the conversation with Prince Andrei and Lisa. And here he's at this dinner he's been invited to. He ate a great deal, and he drank with zest, gazing with ever-increasing amiability at the other guests. And so you just love Pierre. You'd like to be his friend. I would. Natasha, who sat opposite Boris and Pierre, gazed at Boris as any girl of 13 looks at a boy she is in love with and has just kissed for the first time. So earlier on, in one of the earlier chapters, she stole a kiss from Boris. And the same look sometimes fell on Pierre. So here's a girl, she's in love with Boris, or is she just in love with being alive? You know, you get this sense that she's just full of life, and Boris happens to be the one who's there, and it's all sincere. There's nothing insincere about it. She feels these emotions for Boris, but it spills over. It spills over to whoever she sees, of which her sunshine can brighten. And it happens to be that Boris and Pierre are sitting together. And it says, and this is what it says of Pierre. That same look sometimes fell on Pierre, and under the gaze of this lively little girl, he felt like laughing without knowing why. This was the aura of Natasha. And that brings chapter 15 to a close.